Well, after watching this season, one thing definitely resonated with me, and that is that you should never judge a season by its premiere. Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is my review for something that I never thought that I was going to review for you guys. I pretty much thought that I was just going to skip this altogether, but with American Horror Story premiering tomorrow, I figured that the best thing to do would be to go back and binge American Horror Story Hotel, and that is exactly what I decided to do. I binged the entire season. Because I figured that, I heard a lot of people praising it. I heard a lot of people saying it was actually a lot better than what I initially thought it was going to be. And, I have to say that I don't really know if I was in a bad mood or if something just didn't click with me, but I really misjudged this season. In my opinion, this is one of the strongest seasons of American Horror Story we've had yet. I really loved Hotel overall. I thought it was a very solid season. It's not perfect. I definitely will say that. It's not perfect, but it's definitely one of the most consistent, likable, and I think interesting seasons we've had so far. And I'll get into a lot of the stuff that happens in a little bit, because obviously I need to talk about all the plots that go on. I'm not going to talk about, obviously, every single thing that happens, but I'm going to talk about the things I like, things I didn't like, things like that. But basically, guys, here's what I'm going to say. Disregard my review of the first episode. I've made it private for a reason. I'm really not happy with that review. Like I said, I don't really think I knew what I was talking about, but let's just get right into it. The plot of Hotel is pretty simple. We focus on the Hotel Cortez, which is this very mysterious hotel, a la, any kind of abandoned or weird hotels you've heard myths about in LA. And there's this detective, John Lowe, who is investigating this killer who clearly is, killing a bunch of the guests in the hotel, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. Along the way, we realize that there's, a lot more going on in this hotel than we think, and there's a lot more going on than that, but that basically is our main plot, and he, is trying to figure out really why the hotel is the way it is, and kind of gets himself sucked deeper and deeper into the hotel than he ever thought, and that basically is the plot of American Horror Story Hotel overall. But there's a lot more to the show that I definitely do want to talk about, and I definitely can't do that without talking about the cast. This is something that right off the bat I very much have to apologize for, because you guys know I pretty much shitted on the first episode like no tomorrow. I don't know really what I was thinking, because the cast here I think is probably one of the most solid casts we've had. I really think everyone did a tremendous job. I think everyone really got into these characters, and by far this is one of the most likable casts we have had in the show. And right away, I mean, that is an improvement from Freak Show, and I'll get right into that. But let's talk about our central character, who it is kind of hard to pick a central character in the show, because this is one of those seasons where they start off with a certain central, figure as the main character, but then they kind of start to drift away from that character, and I'll get into that in a second. But our main character is Detective John Lowe, played by Wes Bentley. I really liked his character overall. I know a lot of people say that he's boring and that he's uninteresting, and I will say that yes, he's not as interesting as maybe some of the other characters that we have this season, but overall, I still really did get into his character. This is someone who, throughout the entire season, thinks that he's on the verge of insanity. He starts to see these ghosts. He doesn't really fully understand what's going on in the hotel, and he's destined to do whatever he can to find this Ten Commandments killer, and I really thought he did a great job. He's also having a lot of troubles with his family life, and I really did like his performance overall. I thought he did a very strong job, and in my opinion, I thought he was even better than Edward Mordrick. Edward Mordrick was a really good character, but they never really utilized him as well as they could have, and I feel like here with John Lowe, they really did a great job with his character. I really love what he had to do here, and Wes Bentley just immensely impressed me here. I really loved his acting in this season. I thought he really did an incredible job. He really was fantastic. Who I wasn't as huge a fan of was his wife, played by Chloe Sevigny of Alex. I really was not a fan of this character. I thought that she was annoying. I thought that she was kind of degrading at times, because she's just a very repetitive character. The entire season, she does start off with this interesting arc where she's this doctor and she's trying to help patients and everything, but her as a character, I just really could not get into. I found her to be any sort of overbearing, controlling wife that feels that there's something suspicious going on with her husband. She's every character we've seen like that, and I just didn't find her to be that original. Now, granted, John isn't that original either, but I just felt his character was a little bit more well-written. Her character, on the other hand, I just found her to be very contrived, really wasn't a fan of her, and I didn't really feel that these two had the greatest of chemistry, and I understand, obviously, it's a broken marriage, but I just didn't really feel like it was the best choice. I feel like they definitely could have done more with her, but I really wasn't a fan of her overall. And like I said, while John is, this detective, and it's kind of cliche that he's going into darkness and everything, he's also a man searching for his son, and is trying to get back into the acceptance of his family. And, the character of Holden is a character that's kind of underused, because this is their lost son, and he's been kind of, recruited by the Countess, and he's kind of like the Countess's son now. They don't really use him a lot, but when they use him, it's obviously very important, and I thought they did that pretty well. But that's just something I thought worked very well with John and with the Lowe family in general, is them searching for Holden. I thought the storyline was interesting. I definitely did get into it, and overall, I thought it went some really interesting directions. One of the only characters I don't dislike, because basically everyone I really am a fan of. I'm going to get into some of my favorite characters right now, but this is the central plot. These are the, central characters that we do need to talk about, but let's get into the characters I really do want to talk about. Starting off with someone who I definitely am very happy got a lot more to do this season. Kathy Bates is someone who I've loved since Coven. I thought she really had a great character there, but again, this was a character that was a little bit silly, and that was somewhat evil. And then in Freak Show, her character of Ethel was a character that's probably one of the most underused characters in that show, and you just didn't really care about her as much towards the end because they didn't really focus on her. However, her role of Iris, I think, is by far the best role Kathy Bates has played in this show. I really love this character overall. This is someone who is the hotel receptionist, and she's kind of tired of doing the same old shtick, but she also tries to keep it together. But she also has a very messy relationship with her son, Donovan. I really did like getting into the history of her character, finding out what she did, and realizing ways she needs to cope with it. I thought overall she did an incredible job. I loved her character overall. I really got invested in it. But I think just as good as her, and the person that really makes this role so great, is Dennis O'Hare as Liz Taylor. This, without a doubt, is the best role that Dennis O'Hare has ever played. He absolutely slays it in this role. Dennis O'Hare, I think, might give the best performance out of everyone in this season. His character is not only one of the best characters American Horror Story's ever done, it's by far one of the most realized ones as well. And this character is just so interesting. This is someone who is, in fact, transsexual, and there's a reason why, and once you find out his backstory, I thought it added to it that much more. But I really love what he had to do here. I think he was just incredible in the show. The chemistry that him and Kathy Bates have is great. You see how much they rely on each other. I mean, there's this great scene where this is someone that she's been working with for so long, but she hasn't really gotten to know a ton about, and she goes to Liz Taylor, and she finally basically spills her entire life story to Iris, and I thought it was a very well done scene. It never felt too contrived, and I really enjoyed it overall. Like I said, I think they worked very well together. I really like their chemistry overall. They really were fantastic, and definitely one of the best parts of the show, in my opinion. I really thought that they did a great job. One character that definitely needs to be noted, that I definitely do want to talk about, and again, deeply apologize for, is Lady Gaga, because initially when she was doing this show, I thought, this is ridiculous. Why, out of all people, would Ryan Murphy pick Lady Gaga, someone who isn't at all like Jessica Lange, someone who doesn't have that talent that Jessica Lange had, and it was just kind of hard for me to take her seriously. However, on a rewatch of that first episode, and rewatching the entire season, Lady Gaga gave a very nuanced, honest performance as this character of the Countess, or Elizabeth, whatever you want to call her. I really got into this character overall, because this is a character that requires her to not show a ton of emotion, and when she does show emotion, it's obviously very important, but very rarely does she show any emotion. This is someone who seduces people and kills them at the same time, and she's so menacing. I mean, just something about her as this character is so creepy, and you're so freaked out by her just because you know the type of character she can do, you know the kind of shit she can do. I mean, she kills people with her fingernail, and it's so creepy, but I really think she killed this role. I really love what Lady Gaga had to do here. She really was fantastic, and again, I really do want to apologize because I thought that she really did actually do a great job. I don't know why I didn't like her at first. I thought she was great, and I don't know why, like I said, I demoralized her character so much. I thought much. It was actually really good. But her character does have by far the worst character of this season for me, and that is none other than Matt Bomer's character of Donovan. Now, look, I really like Matt Bomer, and I do like the direction that Donovan started out with, because Donovan is someone who has been seduced by the Countess, who has this disease that the Countess gives him where he never grows old. He's essentially a vampire, and basically in order to live, he can live as long as he drinks blood from everyone, and it's definitely an interesting story with him and Iris and where that goes. But he eventually becomes increasingly whiny, increasingly annoying, and the more his character went on, the more I wanted him to die. And I really think Matt Bomer, while I did like his character, I really could not get into this character. I was not a fan of him, and he is one of my only problems this season. I really was not a fan of Donovan overall. I thought he was very annoying, very hard to deal with, and someone that I really just wanted to see die. I really was not a fan of him, I have to say. Unfortunately, I wish that they gave this character better stuff, but unfortunately they didn't, and I just found Donovan to be very, very annoying, and I really was not a fan of him. Now, as good as Dennis O'Hare is, for me, I think the best performance of this entire show, and by far the most committed, is Evan Peters as the character of James Patrick March, because this is such a different role for Evan Peters. Evan Peters, I don't think, has really had a ton of great stuff in the last few seasons. He had some very underutilized characters, some very annoying characters, and not really rootable characters. The characters of Kyle and Jimmy are two very underutilized characters who are very one-note and just very boring, and there's nothing really interesting about them. James Patrick Marks blows every single character that Evan Peters has blown out of the way, and might have found a way for him to top the performance of Tate Langdon, because even in that performance, he still did the Evan Peters shtick, and here he completely transformed himself. Evan Peters is unrecognizable in this role, and he honestly, I feel, is Emmy-worthy. I'm surprised that he did not get an Emmy for this role, because he absolutely slayed it. Mr. March is the owner of the Cortez, and he's owned it since the 1920s, and he's also known as one of the greatest serial killers ever lived, and there definitely is a reason why he has that name. This is someone that you definitely do feel feared by, but just like all the characters in the show, they find a way to humanize him, and I think they did a very good job with that, and he's just a character that's just so fascinating, getting into his backstory, seeing what his life was like. I loved his character overall, and especially his relationship with the character of Miss Evers, who I also thought was fantastic on the show, Mare Winningham. She was great as well. I really loved his character overall. I thought that he, like I said, by far was the most committed of everyone, is the most different, daring, and just out of nowhere role for Evan Peters. I don't know how this role exactly came about and how he got, this gig, but if you didn't think that Evan Peters could act, this will definitely prove you wrong. He absolutely killed it here. I love what he had to do on this show, and I don't think he's ever going to be able to top this role. That's my only thing, is that as good as this role is, I don't think that Evan Peters will ever be able to top it. This is just a character that's simply so interesting and so grand and just so big and just requires so much out of Peters that I don't know if he'll be able to top this role. Now, maybe they'll give him a role similar to it in the next season, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to because of how good he was here. He's darkly humorous, he's very interesting, and I really love what they did with him overall. He was fantastic, and I just really love what they had to do with his character. He was just great. I really love everything about this character. So interesting. I love getting into the history of him. When he's introduced in episode 2, one of the best scenes of any scene in this season. Many of the best scenes include Mr. March, and I thought he was incredible, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of Evan Peters on this season, but like I said, I just don't think he's going to ever be able to top this role, because he really is just so great here. Those are really the standouts that I can talk about, because the other characters in this show, I feel, are a bit underutilized, especially 3 central characters that I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking, while these characters are great, they just don't really have the time to shine, in my opinion at least, and that is Will Drake, who is basically someone that comes in, he wants to renovate the Cortez and tear it down and make it his own sort of thing. He's also a big, into fashion empire, things like that. Countess immediately takes a liking to him because she's obsessed with fashion. So he's definitely one. Cheyenne Jackson does a good job, just not really a ton to do here. Also, Hypodermic Sally, who mainly is there for two reasons. One, so she can be creepy and because it's Sarah Paulson. Two, so she can sleep with John. That's really what she's there for the whole season. They give her this much more interesting arc in the last two episodes. I just wish they would have done a little bit more with her besides what they do, because most of the season is just her sleeping with John and complaining all the time, and I would have wanted her to have a little bit more interesting of a character. And three, by far, I think is the most underutilized character. But the other one that I thought was greatly underused is the character of Ramona Royale. I love this character Angela Bassett played. Someone who has been in many 1970s cheesy pictures, and she does have a history with the Countess and has personal beef against her. I just felt that she didn't really get her chance to shine either. They're great. I don't want to say they're bad, because I think they all are really great, and they all really do shine as characters when they're in it. I just didn't really feel they focused on them as much as they could have, and because of how big the cast is, these three characters were kind of pushed to the wayside. But this is by far, like I said, one of the most enjoyable and I think best overall cast we've had in this show. Almost every character is readable, almost every character is great, and I really did love that about this season, is that right away that is a huge improvement over Freak Show. As you guys know, I started off liking most of the characters and ended the season basically wanting almost everyone to die, and this season it's the exact opposite, and I really did appreciate that, and that's something that I definitely will commend this season for. I think they did an incredible job with that. And there are some other characters I could talk about that are some guest stars and things like that. Like Finn Wittrock makes actually 2 appearances this season as character of Tristan, who Countess takes under her wing, but also character of Valentino, who is the Countess's ex-love. But I'd be here all day if I were to get into the cast. Let's get into what I really want to talk about, and that is the directing and the writing of this season. Because here's the thing, I think that the reason that I was initially thrown off by this season is that it's significantly different than the other seasons. One, it's not really, I'd say, as much of a creep fest as it is more of a character study. And I really did appreciate the fact that this show kind of went in that direction. I mean, a lot of this season is about character giving into addictions. And I think it's something that the show portrays very well, and I really did love that overall. The tone of the show is just so much fun, honestly. The season in general is a lot of fun, but it's also very insightful, and it's one of those things where you come away from it and you can have fun with it, but you also realize that you got something from it, and that's something I really did appreciate. I really did love where they went with that. I thought that was very well handled, and I really love the tone overall. The writing, I think, is some of the best writing the show has done. I consistently was into the writing. I was never not into this season, and that's something I definitely will say, is that I was very much into this. I thought all the plots are very interesting, where they went. Some of them were a bit predictable, I will definitely say that, but I thought where they took a lot of them were unpredictable, where they end up ending, and I definitely really did appreciate that about this season. There are some things that are going to piss people off a bit, but I thought were actually very interesting, in that this season very much functions like season 1. Not just because you have the family dynamic of all the lows and them trying to have like a normal life and be corrupted by darkness and things like that, but mainly because of the fact that this is very much like season 1, where if you die in the season, you come back as a ghost. But it makes a little bit more sense in this season. If you die in the hotel, if you die in the hotel, you come back as a ghost because you have unfinished business with someone. And I think it's a very interesting concept, why these characters are back, the fact that you feel trapped. You honestly do feel trapped inside that hotel points, because the show does rarely goes beyond that hotel, and I really did like that. Of course, there are times they go, beyond it, but most of these characters are trapped in this hotel and are ghosts, and, it seems like characters that aren't easy to identify with, and I think they actually did that pretty well. I really loved it overall, and like I said, I really did get into a lot of the writing here. They do go in some strange directions, but I really did love this whole storyline of the cure, this virus that the Countess passes on to people, where she only gives it to people that she knows she can trust, where if she gives it to you, you can't grow old, you basically stay alive, and like I said, all you have to do is drink blood. I think it's a very interesting concept, and I think they did some very good stuff with that, and I really did appreciate that. Some things do go a bit under the wayside, like there's this whole storyline in the first episode where you see that people are stuffed in the mattresses, and then it's, brought up in the first episode, and it's very interesting, but then they never talk about it again for the rest of the season. And American Horror Story does tend to do this, but that was something that I was kind of interested in exploring. Why did this happen? How did they get in the mattresses? We don't really know. We never really given a reason why, and I wish we were, because I just thought that would have been a little bit more interesting, with us getting a little bit more. explanation of why they're in the mattresses and what's really going on there. I thought that was very interesting. And like I said, I think the characters of the season are just overall a lot more rootable because these aren't just very cardboard cutout characters. Iris isn't just a mom that cares about her son. Liz Taylor isn't just a transvestite woman. There's a lot more to them than that. They go in a lot of different areas with these characters, and I really did appreciate that because these are some of the best characters I think the show has ever had. And I've talked before, when this show has great characters, it's great. The problem with Freak Show is that they didn't have great characters, but this season, I think they definitely did try to improve on that, and I really do appreciate them for going in that route because it really did work with a lot of the characters. Even John, character that I think some people could see as very one-dimensional, just something about him I found so damn compelling. I really got into his storyline, and even when it's revealed that, spoiler alert, he is the killer, which I'm assuming if you've seen the season, if you're watching this review, you've seen the season, so I'm not really going to say spoilers, but when it's revealed that he was the killer, I thought it still kept things interesting, and it really did make sense a lot. I mean, obviously, he was freaking out about things. A lot of scenes that didn't make sense before make a lot more sense then, and I really did appreciate that. I thought that was something that they handled very well, and just the storylines they did, with the Countess and with the Ten Commandments killer, I thought were very well handled, and I definitely really did love that. Something else that I really did love about the season is the fact that it does take place in the present, because I do think American Horror Story is a little bit better when we go in the present and not in the past, because the 50s setting, it works for Freak Show, but it just didn't really work in the way we wanted to, and this season gets us back to basics where we are, in fact, focusing on a bunch of flashbacks, and these, I think, are by far the best flashbacks we've ever had on this show. In my opinion, at least, I think we really do go a lot more in depth. There is an entire episode where we find out the Countess's backstory, and it is by far, and I think maybe my top 5 American Horror Story episodes of all time. I thought it was an incredible episode. We find out so much about her. She becomes such more interesting of a character, and you finally realize that all she really wanted was for someone to love her, and she felt that love, the only way to give into love, was through blood and sex and things like that. And it's a very interesting way they did that, and I really did appreciate that. I should also mention, this is by far the bloodiest season the show has ever done. I mean, this season is so fucking graphic, and I couldn't believe it, but it's a good kind of graphic. It never felt too style over substance, actually. I honestly think that they did keep it quite grounded, and it worked for this type of season. Especially when you have a character who can just slit your throat with their fingernail. I mean, you kind of make the assumption that, yeah, there is going to be a lot of deaths, and there are a lot of deaths this season. And I have to say that unlike last season, when characters die, I felt something. I really did. Most of these characters, when they were gone, I really did feel the void of them being gone. The only character I felt that really did get the short end of the stick was Finn Wittrock's character. Both characters he played, I thought Valentino definitely was the stronger character, like I said, Countess's love. But the character of Tristan, when he died, they go in this direction with him where they definitely try to get you to care more for him. But unfortunately, his character was so underused and so not a character that it was kind of hard for me to, feel bad when he died. And some of the plots that they do, especially with his character, do kind of fade away. And I definitely was a little bit pissed off with that. But it's a lot more inconsistent this season. I definitely did like that. I like that most of the plots they do stick to. This isn't one of those seasons where they just get rid of a bunch of the plots. There are definitely some that they kind of end, but most of the ones they start up, they do in fact end with, and I definitely do appreciate the show for doing that, because I do want this show to go in interesting directions. I do want to see these plots, somewhat not predictable, and I do want to see something interesting, and the show does do that. It actually gives you very interesting stuff to work with, and I really do appreciate the show for going in that direction. The score as well this season is actually so creepy and so synthy, and I really did love the way that was done. There's kind of an 80s feel to some of the music, and you definitely do feel, there's a lot of 80s music in this season in general, but it's also a very modern feel, and I really did love that. By far, one of the standout scenes, that in my opinion, in terms of the blood and the score, and one of the ways I think they utilize the score so well this season, is that of the Countess's and Donovan's introduction, which I'm not going to say much about it. I'm sure you guys heard about in my episode 1 review. All I'm going to say is it is by far an introduction that you will never be able to forget. I mean, especially that last image. I'm not going to be able to get that out of my head. Such a well-done scene, such a great introduction to a character that tells you so much without using any dialogue, and I think they did that so well this season. And I really love is that through most of the season, the characters make very rational decisions. There aren't a lot of out-of-character moments. The only character I felt sometimes got out of character was Donovan. They took him this really weird direction in the second half of the season. It made me really dislike his character. But like I said, other than Donovan, I really did love most of the characters, and I really thought that as well was very consistent. There are also a lot of cameos this season. I forgot to say this, but there are a lot of cameos from some of the past characters from other seasons, and I actually thought it worked pretty well. They could have made this really silly and really cliche and just not work at all, but somehow they really made this work, and I think they did a really good job with just intertwining these characters in, because a lot of characters you see actually end up getting killed in this season, and by far the best is what they did with Queenie's character from Coven. Genius. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious, and they do a really surprising cameo at the end of the season that I don't want to give away if you guys haven't seen, because I really don't want to spoil it for you guys, but I absolutely loved it. I thought the cameos actually factored in very well, and again, it could have felt very random, but somehow they found a way to make it really go with the story. And honestly, this is the season that, one, confirms that everything's connected, but also it shows that these characters, you know, just seeing them interact and seeing them as these different characters, I thought were very well handled. I thought they did it pretty well, and it definitely does show that they're not afraid to do some crossovers from time to time, and I'm definitely hoping they do more of that in the next season, because it actually worked very well this season. But now that I've talked about everything in terms of acting and writing, now I do want to get into some spoilers, just talking to you guys about some things I liked, some things I didn't like. So if you guys haven't seen Hotel, I'm going to talk about the last few episodes and how I felt about them and what impact they had on me. So I'm just going to get into it right away, because I really do want to talk about, I'm not going to talk about a ton of things, but I'll mainly talk about things that happened in like the last few episodes and how I felt they did it overall. So I think I want to go from when John was revealed to be the killer. As I said, John being the killer, yes, it's kind of predictable. I mean, they definitely did it this season where they didn't try to really set up any suspects, but I feel like that was intentional. This wasn't really supposed to be a who's the killer storyline. It's could he actually be the killer? Could our main character that we're following actually descend into darkness? Is this man capable of doing such a thing? And I think they did a really good job with doing that, with making it less of who's the killer and more of can he actually be the killer? And I thought that was something they set up very well. And when we find out that he was working with March and that he has to do one last killing, I knew that that one last killing was not going to be himself. You know, a lot of people thought that he was going to kill himself, but he does end up killing the Countess, which I thought was actually very fitting. I thought it made sense why he had to kill her, because you kill the Countess, you kill most of the evil in the hotel, and, you know, most of the ghosts are because of the Countess, and, you know, Ramona's alive because of her, Donovan's alive because of her, and, basically, he does end up, in fact, killing the Countess, but of course she's not dead, because, again, you die in the hotel, you're there forever, and I thought that was something that was very well handled. I did like that once Donovan died, he stayed dead. I like that his body, you know, got out of the hotel, and he didn't want to stay there. I thought it made sense with his character, so I did like the way that that was done. But what I really did like is where they go, like I said, with the Countess, where she's now trapped in this eternity with March, and we find, March, this was someone that she never loved. She only married because she could get money out of him and things like that, and she never really loved him, but she kind of loved the darkness about him, which I thought was interesting that we saw, and the way the Countess loves someone, I think, is very weird. But of course, Valentino dying, I really felt that did not need to happen. Why did Donovan have to kill Valentino? I didn't really understand. Valentino was really not getting in the way necessarily. I mean, yes, obviously she was marrying Will Drake. Kill Will Drake. That would have made a lot more sense for Donovan to do. Why did he kill Valentino? Will Drake is the one standing in your way. Will Drake is the one that the Countess is going to marry. Why he killed Valentino, I really did not understand. And basically, when Countess said really, that was my response to Donovan when she said that, but killing Natasha, I totally understand. I mean, Natasha definitely was in the way of her and Valentino, and I like that she wasn't at first happy with Donovan. And Iris and Liz, they try to enact revenge on her. Like I said, John is the one that ended up killing her ultimately. But I did think that that was a well done scene. I thought it made sense why she was still in that hotel, and obviously why she's with Mr. March. The one thing she doesn't want, she gets, and definitely was very sad. But at the same time, I mean, can you really blame Liz and Iris for going after all the shit she's caused? It definitely does make sense. I did feel it was really weird where they went with Sally at the end with her begging for John and just suddenly wanting to be with him. But in the finale, I thought that was very well handled. The finale this season is definitely kind of like season 1, but I think a lot more satisfying. There were a lot less questions than season 1, because season 1, there were a lot of questions, there were a lot of things left up in the air, and this season really wasn't like that. This might be, I think, the most satisfying finale that American Horror Story's ever given us, and that's definitely saying something, because most of their finales really haven't been too great, and I think this one was pretty great. It wasn't perfect by any means, but I like where they took it, and I like that it very much focused around Liz and the way that she's going to save the hotel. She kind of takes over, and some renovations starting, things like that. She's trying to stop the ghosts from killing, other humans, because she just doesn't want that to go on anymore. She wants them to get a good review for the hotel. They're going to make sure the hotel stays open and everything. I think the direction they took Sally, though, where she ends up becoming kind of like a media mogul and actually lets her voice be heard, that's kind of what I like with the character. I like where they went with that. I thought that was interesting overall. And I did like a lot of the endings for the characters, like Liz Taylor ending up, getting killed by the Countess. I thought that made a lot of sense, because the Countess, of course, was the one that changed her. And the fact that she did end up with Tristan, again, this was a relation that I felt was very just forced and kind of was just there to make us feel bad for Liz Taylor and Tristan. But I think it felt very genuine. I think Dennis O'Hare really sold it in that scene, that I was okay with it. I was okay that those two end up together. I was perfectly fine with that. John, and John's fate is probably the most morbid of everyone's, where he tries to live a normal life with Alex and Holden. It doesn't really work out in the way he wants it to, and they have to go back to the Cortez, but then John ends up getting shot in the street before he can go back to the Cortez, and now he only appears on Devil's Night, which I thought it definitely was a fitting end. But then the way they ended with the Countess just saying you have a jawline for days, a very random ending. I don't really know why they did that. I get that they're trying to show that it's going to happen again, that there's going to be a new Donovan, the hotel's going to go on, but it just kind of felt random the way that was done. I never was really a big fan of that line in the first place, but I thought it was a very fitting end. I like the way they tied things up. I like the way that things concluded, and I think overall, like I said, probably the most satisfying end American Horror Story has given us thus far. Overall, guys, I love this season. I thought it was a very well-handled season. I really did love where most of the storylines went. There were some things that I thought were a little bit strange, but definitely, I mean, this is one of the most 180 turns I've ever made when it comes to a review. I started this season absolutely hating it, and I ended up really loving it, actually. In fact, I think this is much better than Freak Show, and I've already mentioned why. There wasn't as much randomness. This definitely was a lot more consistent. In my opinion, at least, I can understand if you guys don't think so, but I felt it was a lot more consistent, and I thought the characters were a lot more rootable, and just a really solid season overall. That this show definitely has not jumped the shark. It is still just as good. It is still just entertaining. And in my opinion, I am going to give American Horror Story Hotel, surprisingly, a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. I really did love the season overall. And like I said, besides those few flaws I have, like some dropped storylines or like the character of Donovan, I overall really love what they did with this season. I thought it was really interesting. I thought they went some really surprising, emotional directions that I definitely really did appreciate. Some of the best episodes we've had from the show, some of the best characters we've had from the show, and overall it's one of the best seasons I think this show has given us. That's going to be kind of hard to top, and I don't know if the next season is going to be able to do that, but we'll have to see. But overall, guys, that's it. Finally, I have concluded Hotel. Let me know what you guys thought of the season overall. I know this is very delayed, but I just figured I should watch it before the new season comes out. I don't know what, of course, the theme is. I don't know if it's going to be better. Maybe it'll be better. Maybe it'll be worse. I don't really know. But let me know what you guys thought of the season overall. How does it compare to the other seasons? What did you think of some of the directions they took the characters in? What did you think of the characters that I liked? Did you like what I liked? Did you not like what I like? But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for this week of Big Brother, which which, guys, there really isn't much to talk about because there's only 2 episodes, really. So you want to say this week, I only mean 2 episodes because there's an eviction tonight and one tomorrow. So it's kind of like 2 weeks. I don't know. It's kind of strange at this point, but I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.